Hi, good afternoon. It is my honor here, thank you for those comments. That's really, really nice, thank you. It's my honor here to introduce you Marc Williams, our TxDOT Executive Director. Marc became our Executive Director on June 1st, 2021, this year. And Marc has been with the department since 2012. So Marc started out working, become a director of one of our transportation planning development section, overseeing a bunch of different sections in TxDOT, like environmental, aviation, our rail division and all that. So he's overseeing a bunch of our different offices over here in TxDOT. And Marc worked his way up from there to become the Deputy Executive Director, overseeing almost half of everything that TxDOT does. And then now, finally, he's becoming our Executive Director. So before Marc joined TxDOT, what he has done is he's worked on a lot of transportation planning, development, implementation type project throughout the regions in different United States, both in the private and public sector. You know, Marc was commissioner in the Kentucky DOT, also served as one of the commissioners up there. So what has Marc done? Since Marc has came to become the executive director, what he has done, he went and visited 8 of our districts so far. He intends to visit all our 24 districts here in Texas. And he has visited Fort Worth, Waco, Houston, you know, and Wichita Falls, some of those other ones too. And one of the things that Marc did in some of these trips, I was in the Houston one, I wasn't in some of the other ones, but I was told by reliable sources that during these meetings, Marc was able to talk to all our employees about the missions and his goal for TxDOT. And Marc was able to talk to all our employees at different levels of the management, from district engineer all the way down to our maintenance tech one. He was able to talk to everybody with the same respect and gave everybody the same information of what his goals and vision are. So that's a quality that is very rare in higher leadership, and I think we have a great leader here that is leading TxDOT. So I was also told to talk a little bit about something personal about Marc. So there's only a couple of things I can come up with. I think the first thing everybody already know is Marc graduated from Texas A&M with both a bachelor and master degree in civil engineering. So everybody about knows that. But the other 2 things that I was able to scrounge up was Marc is an avid runner when he had some spare time, which I don't know whether he will anymore nowadays, but he's an avid runner. And the other thing that he does when he has some time is he also plays the banjo. So if anybody has a banjo here, maybe Marc can strike up a tune and try and entertain everybody. So with that, I want y'all to help me welcome Marc Williams, our Executive Director.
Thank you very much, Eliza, for just keeping it at those 2. I think we could have gone into other areas, and I'm always concerned about that. But Eliza has been a great friend, and it's been great to get to know her and to work with her. Fantastic team here in the Houston district. We are very fortunate to have the leadership that we have here in Texas, and specifically here in Houston, as Eliza spoke about. I've had the opportunity to try to do my best to get out to visit as many districts as possible. I've been to 8 of them. This is my 2nd trip now to Houston. So you all are unfortunate maybe in that regard. But you know, it's been really terrific for me to be able to go out and hear from and see from just the broad base of employees that we have and are. I'm just honored to work with with the Texas Department of Transportation. It's just really a blessing and something that I'm deeply appreciative to. So I'm going to go through and kind of make a few comments. Please eat your salads and enjoy the food. I don't want people sitting there going, oh, I wonder when he's going to finish up, because I like those. Those avocados on the salad are looking really good right now, and you know, Marc keeps kind of droning on and on and on. So please go right in, jump in and eat. When I talk about Houston, one of the things that I'm particularly also very proud of is I do have roots here in Houston. I graduated high school in Houston. At the time, it was a relatively new high school in Cypress Creek High School. It's kind of an old high school now. It's kind of odd how things, you know, kind of evolve that way. But I also started my career here as after graduating at Texas A&M and taking a job working in the professional engineering arena here in Houston, and spent some time here, and then migrated north for a while up to Kentucky, and enjoyed some time and activities there, and it was really, you know, important to get out and kind of see and be engaged with different parts of the United States, and have had the opportunity to do that throughout my career, but have looked forward to getting back to Texas, which I was able to do some time ago, and was just really blessed with the opportunity to join TxDOT and have an opportunity to serve the state of Texas. I'm a native Texan, and doing that work has been tremendously important to me. And so talk here a little bit. Thank you again for the welcoming and for the opportunity to be here with TAG. We certainly appreciate all that you all do. And so I would like to talk just a little bit. You know, Eliza mentioned about some of the conversations that I've been having around the state about key initiatives and kind of my focus. And so I'll kind of start up there and try to kind of bring it down locally. I know there's probably a couple of issues on everybody's mind here in the Houston area, and certainly want to touch on and address those, and answer any questions that you all may have. You know, when I go out and I speak to different groups, and particularly to our employees, that's as Eliza talked about, really what I'm spending a lot of time on as executive director. Some of my first priorities have been to speak with and engage with our employees across the state of Texas, and I drop in on maintenance offices and area offices, sometimes unannounced. So be careful, Eliza. Just, you know, I may stop in somewhere, you know, Harris County North area office, something like that. You never know where I might be. But it's really been great to hear from the employees. It's helped me to better understand the things that I need to be doing as executive director in this role to meet the needs of the great team members that we have with TxDOT, and to make sure that we're effectively serving Texas in all that we do. In terms of the 5 key initiatives, I kind of keep them to 5. That makes it simple. I can kind of remember 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Safety is always a top priority, and I'll touch on that a little bit more as we go forward, but relentlessly focusing on that. And we've got some real challenges in that area that we have to be up to the task to responding to. Enhancing project delivery, that continues to be a top expectation for us with TxDOT. Expectation from you all at the local level, expectation from our legislative leaders as well. And I'll talk a little bit about why they may have kind of heightened expectations on us as we're going forward. Better use of technology, leveraging technology across what we do, across our transportation systems, looking at ways, there's tremendous opportunities to help improve safety and operational efficiencies in that arena, and we've made some great strides. Houston is out leading the way on a lot of what they're doing here. I had a chance to talk to Uzana and others in Eliza's team about some of the work y'all are doing on 1960, on upgrading our signal systems there with broadcasting signal phase and timing information to help make the traffic flow there more predictable, help make it safer, better able to communicate with vehicles that have and are equipped with that technology to receive that information. It's all part of where we are going. What's really exciting about our transportation industry right now is just the rapid evolution of technology and the impact that it's having. And we need to be at the forefront of that in what we're doing. We need to remain at the forefront. I feel like we're already there. Texas is a home to so many different entities that are moving to the state and making Texas their home with interest in this particular arena because of what we offer, because of the innovation that we have, and we're going to continue to move forward with that. Using data resources more effectively, being performance-based in what we do and the decisions we make and how we go about managing our programs and operations, and there are tremendous areas of advancement in that. And then in the area of diversity, the fifth area, very important in what we're doing, making sure that we're continuing to strive as we think about TxDOT, that we are better reflecting Texas in who we are and in what we do and in how we go about doing it. And I'm just really excited about the opportunities. Honestly, we've got to look at that continuously. We're facing continued challenges in the evolution of things like technology. Our workforce looks so much different now than it was just 10, 15 years ago. As you walk through TxDOT, and go through different divisions, I'm a professional engineer. I certainly respect and appreciate the value of my training and my education and my licensure in that area. And as 10 years ago, as you went through most of our divisions, engineer. Now as you go through, it's engineer, planner, IT person, communication specialist, broad background, business specialist, and we're seeing those individuals move up through the organization into different leadership ranks, and we're a better organization because of that. So those are some of the things that we focus on when we talk about what diversity means and how we look at diversity within the Texas Department of Transportation. But of those 5 that we talked about, that I touched on just for the purposes of this conversation, I'm going to focus on 3 of them: safety, technology, and then project delivery. And then we'll talk a little bit more about some of sort of current events, things going on around the state and here locally. So back to safety. Safety continues to be our top priority, as I've mentioned before. Commissioner Ryan, who's you all have met before, she is a tremendous advocate when it comes to safety, and we certainly appreciate Commissioner Ryan's focus and leadership in that area, in all that she has done to help champion that cause, not only on the commission, but locally in the community and statewide. You can't think of Commissioner Ryan without thinking about the important safety messages that she brings forward. But despite that, despite some of the efforts that we've made in that area and trying to keep that at the top of our priority list, you all are aware 2020 was not a good year in terms of transportation safety, particularly in the area of fatalities. And that came as a tremendous surprise to myself and practically anybody else around the transportation industry. And Texas was not alone in that. Texas, along with just about every other state that I'm aware of, saw an increase in their fatalities over 2020. And in Texas, we jumped up from somewhat below about 3,600 to almost 3,900 fatalities last year in 2020. You have to go all the way back to 1984 to find a single year where we had more fatalities than we did last year in 2020. And that was after years of really sustained good progress that we have been making. So that was disappointing. It's not something that we're discouraged about. We understand the mission that's ahead of us and what we need to be doing to better address that very critical need. And we've still got efforts that we need to be making going forward as well. This year is not shaping up to be an improvement over last year. Numbers are still in process, but right now we're running ahead of where we were last year at this time. So we've got really vital and important work that we need to be doing collectively going forward. And one of the things that's really important that I mentioned is always being willing to challenge the status quo, particularly in the area of safety, and to relook at the things that we've been doing and how we've been going about it and what we can be doing to change that approach to make sure that we're improving the safety and keeping our motorists, pedestrians, bicyclists safe in what we're in their use of our transportation facilities. Technology, continuing to push to take greater opportunity in that area. I've touched on that already. We're continuing to lead the way in areas like vehicle communication and infrastructure communication. I mentioned the SPAT program that that's going on here in Houston. We're looking at ways to operate and apply technology enhancements. It's critical to helping us and our partners achieve more of our safety and mobility and connectivity goals around the state, help us to better adapt to changing conditions. And while I'm not talking much more about the data and performance aspect of it, we're seeing real opportunities to, with technology, to leverage the information on what's happening on our infrastructure today. Often on the safety side, we go back and we look at crash and fatality hotspots. We're looking at that after the fact. We're seeing now in the capabilities of our vehicles the opportunity to see data and information real time through telemetric data and others that can tell us what is happening on our highway system now in terms of vehicle traction control, steering, braking, things that can help alert us to help alert systems like TransSystems here in Houston. Hey, there's something that seems to be going on somewhere. Let's see if we can find out what that is, see if we can maybe address the concern and prevent fatalities from occurring, as opposed to going back after the fact, looking at the data and going back to go see why there was a problem to begin with. So very important area there that we're making great strides there, and it's really exciting for us going forward. Third area is I want to go back to project delivery, and that continues to be a very vital focus for us. We hear the word execute from Chairman Bug on a regular basis. He usually, just to make sure that we understand that well, he tends to use it in threes: execute, execute, execute. So if he says it 3 times in a row, we understand the point. And that is a very high expectation. It's one of the areas that we're looking at right now in how we're working with our districts in going in and programming projects in our lettings, looking at the availability of funding that we have, and making sure that those projects are ready to go and that we're programming our lettings to meet that funding as it's available now. And that's causing some of the challenges that are related to projects in the Houston area that we'll talk about later. Is that expectation on funding, making sure that we're delivering projects as that funding is available and utilizing it effectively, efficiently, and wisely, working as well to kind of help clear any bureaucratic roadblocks that may exist with our districts so that they can move forward on projects and help us execute. I want to pivot a little bit away from the 5 priorities that I have as executive director that I've been pushing and promoting with our agency, and maybe give you an update on a few things. Some of it you all are aware of. I know TAG keeps up to date on many of these issues, particularly as it involves legislative and federal legislative issues at the state and federal level. Offer just a little bit of perspective from my point of view and TxDOT's point of view on some of those. At the state level, I would say this last session in the spring, I've kind of characterized it as probably one of the best sessions for transportation that nobody's really heard about. And that's okay, because maybe they'll forget about it and feel like, you know, when they come back to Austin in 2 years, boy, we ought to do something about transportation. Because I tell you, I continued after, you know, the legislature passed Prop 1 and Prop 7, we continued to hear from our legislative leaders, and we appreciate their support for transportation. But it seemed like for a while, every legislative session we would come to, they'd say, well, we just got finished a really good program for transportation in Texas just last session. No, that was about 3 sessions ago. But it was a really good session for us overall. We had some great news. One of the areas that was important was the opening up the ability for us out of the Texas Mobility Fund, the TMF fund, to begin to have the opportunity to leverage what could be about $3.6 billion of additional bonding capacity that is paid through by the state of Texas. And we have those needs out there, and that is very appreciative. We also got, as we went through the legislative session, some updated revenue forecasts for TxDOT and for Texas. Proposition 1 funding has jumped up significantly, several $100 million, and even another forecast probably is pushing us now close to about $1 billion statewide over the biennium of additional Prop 1 funding over what we had when we began the legislative session at the beginning of this year. You all remember at that point in time there was a lot of uncertainty about where we were going to be and what challenges that we had, and quite honestly we've really come out of that very well. There are some other areas that were important to us at TxDOT. We were able to get some of the additional funds that we have transferred out of the State Highway Fund to the Texas Emissions Reduction Program. We now have about $90 million of that coming back to us from that program that we can begin to use on congestion and mitigation and air quality projects around the state. And we've been kind of seeing a couple of $100 million on a biennial basis going out of the State Highway Fund into the TURP program, and that TURP program continuing to grow and increase, and it was now at or over $1 billion. We've got needs for those funds, and that was very important. And $90 million doesn't sound like a whole lot, you know, when you're talking about billions of dollars of transportation needs, but it's a significant impact, particularly when we look at our 10-year planning documents and you multiply that, well, that's $1 billion. So that's very important, and each point of progress helps us. At the federal level, we're, as you all are, continuing to monitor conversations, if you will, on reauthorization and the infrastructure package and the infrastructure debate that's ongoing. I'm not here to predict what's going to happen. Wouldn't do that. But it is something that we keep an eye on. A couple of things that are really important to us in this. If you kind of want to know what are maybe the 3 key federal issues for us, you know, that we convey to Congress when it comes to either reauthorization or things like infrastructure. One of the things that I think needs to be really a concern for many of us in the transportation and infrastructure arena is really the increasing partisan tone when it comes to the topic of infrastructure. If you look back just as recently as the last reauthorization bill, those bills passed with huge bipartisan support. And that is something that we have typically taken for granted in our area of work. And it is concerning that we're moving to a more partisan basis when it comes to infrastructure. And what that means for us as infrastructure owners and operators is we're kind of at the wind, you know, subject to the winds of change. We're kind of a flag, if you will, you know, that gets blown by these different winds, and if they continue to change every time there might be a shift in the partisan levels in Congress, that makes it very difficult for us to move forward with an understanding and a confidence of what the policies and the programs are going to be. These projects don't start overnight. They are often years in the making. Plans are years in the making, and if all of a sudden things change because of what may be different changes in partisan ideas, it puts us back, it sets us back quite a bit, and I'm very concerned. We're hoping that there might be some opportunity still to come together on the subject of infrastructure and on reauthorization, and do it in a bipartisan manner, because that gives us a much better foundation and a footing and confidence for what direction is not only now, but, you know, in a reauthorization bill, it may be 6 years, and to have a confidence and understanding that that's going to be with us for the foreseeable future, and the rules and policies that are driven by that will stay with us. A couple of other things that are important for us at the federal level: continuing to fight for a more equitable rate of return for Texas. Texas continues to be by far the biggest donor state when it comes to our federal transportation funding and the return on that funding, which means, you know, we're the biggest loser when it comes to that topic. Every now and then there's a couple of other states that fall into the category of being a donor state, and then they kind of flip out and are able to get on the positive side of that. But we have not received a fair return on our federal gas tax dollars. And when you talk about some of the supplement, the general fund supplement that goes in to support our reauthorization bills that we're relying upon, well, that general fund supplement that we pay for out of our taxes and other sources that we contribute to the federal government, none of that comes back to Texas because we're not even getting our federal gas tax back. So that is a really key issue. We appreciate the support that our congressional delegation has given to that. That has been one thing that in Texas has been bipartisan. It was about 2 years ago that, thanks to the work of Chairman Bugg, we were able to get a letter of support signed by our entire congressional delegation on this topic of fairness in our federal return to Texas. A third area, though, that I'll touch on also at the federal level is protection of our core highway programs. One of the things that we're continuing to see and that we've worked on, we made a lot of tremendous progress on this over the past several cycles of reauthorization, is a consolidation of our federal highway programs into about 5 or 6 core programs. We're starting to see those break apart now into other niche programs being proposed by Congress. We're seeing an increase in potential desire for discretionary program funding. Discretionary programs like infra and build that you hear about with a lot of hoopla, those never work out well for Texas. Never work out well for Texas. Oftentimes, if you just take the maximum amount that a state could make through a particular call for projects, if we were to hit the bonanza on the latest round of infra funding that's through the discretionary program, that would not even get us to about the 10% level that is effectively what we contribute to the highway program at the federal level. So discretionary programs are never helpful for the state of Texas, and we fall even well below the poor rate of return we get when we just talk about our core programs. So talk a little bit about where we are on the local front. Obviously, Houston, 4th largest metropolitan area in the state. The transportation system in Houston is vital for what we do and to supporting the economic engine that Texas represents. One of those areas that we've made progress on, it's been a big priority for our commission and others, has been the Texas Clear Lanes Initiative. We've made tremendous investment in the Houston area. We have over $800 million worth of projects, 5 under construction related to just the Clear Lanes initiative alone in Texas, looking at breaking up many of the bottlenecks that we have in this region. TTI comes out with the top 100 most congested roadways in the state every year, and it's kind of a little bit of a sick competition between different metro areas who seem to be happy because their project is at the top of the list. Yay, 16 Loop, we're number 1. And then I-35 in Austin is number 1. Boo on Austin. But, when you take it and look at it collectively, what I've referred to Houston before is, unfortunately, you're kind of the, and this is an Aggie saying this, you are kind of the SEC of the top 100 most congested projects, because you all have by far more bottlenecks on that list than any other metro area in the state. And we continue to have work to do. Fortunately, we're moving forward with our annual update of the Unified Transportation Program, the UTP, otherwise our 10-year plan, and that's about $74 billion worth of projects that are in that plan. And one of them in particular that I know that I need to discuss, and we'll touch on it here, is the North Houston Highway Improvement Program, I-45, here in Houston. And last I looked, we had in the UTP about $5.5 billion worth of funding that largely is commission-generated funding that they have administered through either Category 2 or Category 4 or discretionary fund in the UTP. And I apologize, I was using 10-year plan, UTP lingo, but those are funds and areas of fund that the commission has designated. It's not federal allocation programs, but it's funding that the commission has oversight of. And this is a project that, again, really thank you to many of you all in this room that's been part of this effort. Thank you in particular to our Houston district team. I erred and I didn't, I meant to introduce as well, in addition to Eliza, Varuna Singh, Raquel Lewis, James Koch with our Houston office. You all know the great people those individuals are. Quincy still hangs around, pops up from time to time. He's got statewide responsibilities over all of our districts, and then also here today is Jerry Haddican, who works with me in Austin in our government affairs program. These people have put their heart and soul into advancing the I-45 project to where we are today. It's a project that is going to help improve safety. It's going to address congestion. I mentioned the top 100 bottlenecks. There's at least 6 or 7 of them that fall along this particular corridor, not just on a total traffic side, but it's also home to, I think, the most congested freight bottleneck in the state and one of the top in the nation. And so it's got a wide range of importance to this region when it comes to addressing congestion. But there's other elements as well, too. One of the very important components of this project that the team has worked on is improvements to flooding and elevating the capacity of the drainage systems along that corridor, which are currently meeting what maybe used to be 100-year design standards, but elevating those now to 500-year standards using updated models and addressing a really critical problem along that corridor and for the Houston area, affecting many of the communities and areas along that route, and a very significant and positive aspect of it. And then fourthly, working hard to make sure that as we've been planning that project, that we're better aligning it with the range of different transportation modes and needs in the region and along the corridor and the communities that are adjacent to that. Interrelating it with our transit service, it's adding 2+2 HOV managed lanes, non-tolled managed lanes to the corridor. That's the additional capacity that's being added. Capacity that is increasing the number of high occupancy vehicles that can use that corridor most effectively and efficiently. It's also better relating and linking and improving transit and pedestrian connections, making those safer for users of those modes, and looking at other key linkages that are important to the community. We've spent thousands of hours, tens of thousands of hours in community engagement meetings, understanding the needs and how to develop a project that's important. And that project did not come out of TxDOT's efforts. It's come out of 15 years of community planning and engagement. It started 15 years ago with an initial planning study that involved TxDOT, Metro, Harris County, Houston, HGAC under Alan's tenure. Thank you for being here, Alan. And framed up the concept of that project. And that concept and that project itself, the scope of the project, has been reflected continuously in the regional transportation plans and programs that the Houston-Galveston Area Council maintains and manages. And as we began to move forward with the environmental process, we had to align that process with those plans and programs. We couldn't go outside of the plans and programs without going back to HGAC and working with the community. And that is how, and I'm going to talk a little bit about process here as I wrap up, because I think it's really important that we have a clear, transparent understanding of how that process works and what the impacts will be if the decision is to change course. So these are processes that are guided, that involve the region, that are guided by federal law primarily, but also state rules and programs. We have to, as we go through the environmental process, undertake projects in their scope, in their purpose and need that align with the regional transportation plan. And that's what we've done. And as we've moved forward, we've worked with the local community to shape those needs within that overall regional vision. And the outcome of that was the record of decision that we published in January, after extending the public involvement period even farther and beyond what the federal requirements were, again, to make extra sure that we were listening effectively to the community and giving people an opportunity to provide comment and input to that important project. And so we were at the point where we had an approved record of decision and we're ready to move forward with the initial request for proposal for the design, a major design build element, the first major design build element down in the downtown area around to the south of us here. And things began to change. We had been hearing and heard from key local officials that perhaps the project that had been defined in the regional transportation plans and that we had based our programs on, our environmental on, was not the project that they wanted anymore, that they wanted to look at potentially redefining that project as opposed to maybe refining that project. We had a lawsuit brought on us by the county judge challenging it. We had FHWA ask us to pause and begin to look at allegations of Title VI concerns, which we take very seriously. We took so seriously that we were proactive in reaching out to FHWA 2.5 years ago to bring their civil rights team here to Houston. We had an opportunity to drive them around, work with them and engage with them, get their input and guidance to make sure that we were following the rules and the processes effectively. And then something changed. And so that same team is now back re-examining many of the things that they quite frankly helped guide us on and that we followed as we move forward. So where we are today is that the commission, recognizes that this is a challenge. We don't know, we don't understand the time frame for how and where things may move forward. Chairman Bugg has been very engaged trying to work with key community members and leaders, trying to see if there's a path forward. To date, we've not been able to identify that. To date, we've still received some pushback on the project from the City of Houston, for instance, saying, we really want to be able to redefine the purpose and need on the project. And that sounds like, if you don't understand what the purpose and need is, if you're not aware of the federal environmental process, when you say we want to define the purpose and need of the project, you're going all the way back to square one. And so if you're somebody who needs somebody to explain that to you, there's a bunch of people I know in this room who understand how that environmental process works, but I don't think it's something that the community has really understood what that needs. If somebody says, well, we would like to improve, we would like to redo and reassess the purpose and need, to your average citizen who probably has a normal life and doesn't follow, Transportation 101, that seems reasonable. But if you follow and understand Transportation 101, when you're redefining the purpose and need, you're talking about going back in the environmental process, redoing many of the transportation plans and programs that HGAC has done and built around this project. It's not easy to update a regional transportation plan or an air quality model at the MPO level. But that's what happens if you redefine the project, and that appears to be where the impasse is right now. There's key voices in the community that want to redefine the project. We've developed a record of decision consistent with the environmental program and are prepared to move forward in that. But our commission is concerned. They voiced their concerns last month. As I talked about, the execute, the expectations to deliver projects, they realize they can't have $5.5 billion sitting on a project that we don't know what direction it's going to go. And so that's why they have, through their public involvement process that comes up every year, this is a state process for public involvement, they've asked for some specific comments and input on the degree to which and whether that project, there's support for the project as defined in the plan, or they need to reassess. And if we need to reassess, we're required even by state law to reevaluate the funding on the project. The legislature passed HB 20 about 2 sessions ago that requires us to do that. So the commission, in a sense, kind of has their hands somewhat tied. If the project is being redefined, they have to reassess the funding that has been put on it, and we have to make sure that that funding is being utilized effectively. We can't be ineffective in advancing project funding. So that's the challenge that we have when it comes to NHHIP. I appreciate you all and your efforts to understand and be aware of kind of how that process works, and happy to answer questions about that. I do want to conclude and thank Mustafa, the TAG board. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Andrea, thanks for your leadership and adapting and keeping things informed throughout the whole COVID transition where we couldn't do any of this, you all know the great job that Andrea did, and I think just effectively really elevated the game and the voice of TAG through that. All of a sudden we found, TAG was all over the place when it came to communication and public involvement and engaging with local elected officials, and that's been very important. And it continues to be important to hear from you. We mentioned earlier, Mustafa, you mentioned the importance of the UTP process, hearing from you all, but it continues to be important as well for key local leaders and others to hear from you, because that's important. We could hear from 100,000 people telling us we really want this project to move forward, but if we can't come to an alignment and an understanding as to whether or not we're moving forward with the project as has been defined in the plan, or if it's, no, we have to redefine the project, we have to come together on that with many of the key leaders that are here in this region. So I will conclude, and again, thank you very much. Thank you, Andrea and Mustafa, again, for the opportunity to be here today to speak with you all. Thank you for your engagement and your support of transportation needs, not only in Houston, but in the state of Texas. Thank you. Any questions?
Maybe, if you don't mind, you want to take some questions?
Okay. Go ahead.
So my name's Frederick. The Houston port just announced in the last 2 days that they've had record unloading of ships. In last year, they said that 25% of that is only going on rail, which means 75% of the projected growth over the next 10 years is going on your system. Is there any effort to increase the freight speed? And if so, is there infrastructure money coming for, say, back rate crossings like in Conroe and all these supporting rail systems so that we can get some of that freight off that 25%, raise it 35, 40?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, that is clearly an area of focus. I know Tyson's here with Union Pacific. Tyson's a familiar face to me because of this issue here. We realize that our role as the Texas Department of Transportation is not highway-centric. We do focus a lot of our time and energy and effort on that because a lot of our money is earmarked at the state level for highways. But as I talked about with Harris County, we recognize, or with the North Houston Highway Improvement Project, we recognize the importance of multimodal connections and improvements, and the degree to which we can effectively help improve the efficiency and operations of our rail system. We recognize and understand that that helps relieve a significant amount of truck traffic on our highways. Now, not all freight is subject to and able to be moved by rail, despite folks like Tyson's best efforts to try to accommodate that. Some of it has to be locally and regionally distributed, but we know that our two systems have to work together, and that's a constant focus. We meet on a quarterly basis with our Class 1 operators and Commissioner Ryan and our leadership team to talk about those projects, to understand what we can be doing better in partnership, and to seek out funding for those projects that will help relieve that. So thank you. It's a great question. Tyson, since I've called you out, are you going to correct me? Thank you.
Jack's got a question here.
Jack.
Sir, thank you for recognizing TAG's role. We are grateful. We too appreciate Ms. French and our chairman. Question is, with regard to I-45, do you have in mind that you would share with us a specific or even general potential solution that could bring the parties, the differing ideas, the differing plans together?
Well, the solution and understanding the commission itself has to kind of assess that, and they'll be assessing that in August. But the solution as it stands today is whether or not the community is supportive collectively, and some of the key voices in the community are supportive of the project as defined in the regional transportation plans and programs of HGAC, and it has been effectively addressed and represented in our record of decision and environmental impact statement. To date, that doesn't appear to be the case. We have acknowledged, and Eliza and her team have continuously reached out and said, you know, when it comes to the project itself, we understand and recognize that there are some opportunities to refine that project within the scope of what has been defined in our regional plans and in our environmental document. And if the region can come together and support that, I think we've got a path forward. If we remain in a bit of an impasse, which is where we're at right now, that the community is looking at, in some areas, redefining that project, that keeps us in this area of a state of unknown. And that's not a good position to be at. So it's coming together on a clear path forward with the current plans and programs that are in place by the Houston-Galveston Area Council and with TxDOT, or saying, hey, we've got to go somewhere else. And if we've got to go somewhere else, then we've got to realize that we're going back a couple of steps in the process, and the time frame to move forward is kind of undefined in that instance. So it's really coming in alignment on, are we following the plans as adopted with some refinements, or are we not?
So the definition of refinement is really the key, is it not?
It's something that, yes, well, you're maintaining the scope and the intent of the project as it was defined and has been defined for a number of years in the regional transportation plans of Harris County. If you're changing that scope, if you're redefining it, then you're going back to square one, you're changing the purpose and need, and that puts us back into that unknown. Commissioner?
Let me just speak in the context of Harris County. Let me first start with the great job that Last Paul has been doing. This has been, it's an understatement to say this has been difficult. There's many issues on the table, but one thing's pretty clear. The most important evacuation route on the planet is I-45. And that affects many underserved neighborhoods. That affects millions of people. When you talk about drainage and flooding, that's just so very important. So I'm trying to be an encourager, someone that is solutions oriented. But the great job that TxDOT's done, and I've only worked with TxDOT for 45 years. And one thing I know about TxDOT, you do it safe, you do it according to the rules, and everybody needs to understand that that's federal requirements or state requirements and environmental rules and regulations. So we've tried to provide input on that. Let me just say there's a large contingent of folks out here that think the original intent, the original purpose that TxDOT has been working on for 15 years, in which I participated in, that's a good thing. Also, let me just quickly acknowledge the great flexibility that TxDOT has in adjusting within the context and trying to come to a solution. So I'm hopeful. Don't give up on us. There's a lot of folks providing positive input. Just know that the vast majority of the folks that live in the region are in support of the purpose and need that you have got there, and hopefully we can get everybody on board in terms of recognizing it.
Thank you, Commissioner. And thanks again for your good words for our team here in Houston. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Mark, I'll have to put you on the spot because I'm sure a lot of the folks here would want to know this, but with the pullback that you did towards the end of this year on consultant contracts and pausing some things based on some budgetary considerations, I'd just like to hear some of your comments of how we're going to get back on track, so to speak, going forward.
Yes. So, yeah, that I understand there's probably quite a few that may be interested in that. Sorry.
I'm sorry to do that, but I do think people want to hear that.
Yeah, real quickly, it really boils down to, I think, more effective communication and budget management that we need to be doing. I talked to a couple of consultants yesterday, and I think the observation was made that we've continued to be running at a level of about $1 billion a year in project development going to engineering and design services. And last year was no different. It was still in that $1 billion range, but it was the second highest year that we have ever had in this area. But somehow we made a sow's ear out of what should have been a silk's purse. And I think it really kind of boils down to we need to do a better job of managing expectations, working more effectively with our districts in that area. That's been a important priority. I didn't, in my little stump speech that I go through, I often talk about that, and I said, I'm going to brush over that. They may not want to hear it, but Rich corrected me on that. But it's an important issue, and we recognize that. I've spent a good part of my career on the consulting engineering side. I understand the impact of some of the maybe starts and stops that we saw last year, and it's a priority for me that things move much smoother going forward. And we're in the process now of working with the districts on programming and communicating what is being funded currently out of the current allocation that I think right now is about $975 million. And I would say that based upon that, we're going to take a look at how effectively we're moving projects forward, getting them ready to deliver. And if we need to step up a bit above that, we have the ability to do that. We're really making sure that we're concentrating on the first 4 years of the UTP. We're getting those projects ready for development and delivery, and that's where our focus is, and we need to be doing that, but we've got to do it in a way that's systematic and effective, and we certainly appreciate that we've made some improvements going forward, and I think you'll see that this year.
Marc, I just want to say welcome back to Houston.
Glad to be here.
Great to have you home, and thanks for the presentation today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for being here.